All right, everyone. I'm excited to introduce my next guest, one of the most accomplished and successful writers and producers in the TV industry. Been a staff writer and executive producer on more than 350 episodes of sitcoms, including The Golden Girls, Laverne and Shirley, and 2 Garry Shandling specials on HBO. Please welcome to the show, Marc Sotkin. Hey.
Hey, how you doing, Jeff?
How you doing, man?
I'm good.
Amazing career. So many great things. The Garry Shandling.
And by the way,
special-
those were on Showtime.
Oh, they were
Okay,
on
they
show?
were not
Oh,
on
sorry.
HBO. This was very early in Gary's career. Showtime was the first people who said yes.
I wanted to ask you, I'm trying to connect dots, but if you say no, like I know you worked on Blonsky's Beauties. Do you know Fred Fox Jr.?
Of course, I know Fred Fox Jr.
Okay, so because what
Okay.
his first writing thing was with Garry Shandling. Yeah.
Gary worked with a lot of people. When I used to watch The Tonight Show, and you'd see people who said, "Oh yeah, we knew each other in New York." Well, it's like Marlon Brando lived with Wally Cox. Okay, it's like, how did that happen? And Gary and I kind of got off the bus on the same day and met very, very early in our career. I actually met in an improv class, so I know that he was working on material and things, and was a sitcom writer before he committed to stand-up. So I'm not surprised that Freddie knew him.
Yeah, I think they wrote a spec script together. It was like one of
Okay.
the very first
Oh,
before he
very,
I think,
very, very early on.
very early. I think that
Very early on. Yeah.
Garry Shandling has one of my favorite jokes like ever, which I think he said. I remember because my parents loved Garry Shandling, and so I would watch the Showtime specials. It was is it Porsche or Porsche? Porsche. So I was driving my Toyota.
Yeah. Very, very funny guy. Very few people know this. We actually did a double act early on. My middle name is Daniel, and Gary's middle name was Emmanuel, and we were Daniel and Emmanuel. We only did it a couple times, and fortunately, I got my first writing job. And I don't know what happened to Gary, but yeah, things worked out for me. So yeah.
Gary, yeah, it worked out for both of you.
I guess it did. Yeah, I guess it kind of did. Yeah.
The 25th anniversary special that was before Larry Sanders Show, right?
It was definitely before Larry Sanders Show. When you watch the 25th anniversary special, one of the last things is when he goes and makes up with Carson, and he's walking backstage, and Gary's leaving, and he said to me, "There's something here." So it was, I think that was the spark. He knew he was onto something. That special was great fun to do. Senor Wences, he was like growing up. We were watching Ed Sullivan's show and stuff. So getting to work with some people that normally we would not have crossed paths. So that was a lot of fun.
Before you got into like improv and like, what was your background before that? Did you know you always wanted to write or make TV or be in entertainment?
I was hooked on, so I've always had TV. It wasn't I'm not from before TV, but not too far after TV. And, when I see kids just glued to their phones now, I get it. I saw TV and was like, what, this is really good. She wouldn't let me do it all the time, but I would literally put talcum powder on my face and tell my mother I didn't feel well and stay home from school. And we lived in New Jersey, right across from New York. And I'd spend all day watching like the original sitcoms, things that you probably never, December Bride and just these old shows, People's Choice, figuring out, I wasn't aware that I was in graduate school, figuring out who can do it, who's good and who's bad, but I always loved it. And then the circumstances worked out that I was an underwear salesman living in Houston, Texas, driving 40,000 miles a year in Texas, selling BVD underwear. And I said to my wife, I think I can always get a job that I hate as much as this. Let's go to Hollywood and see what happens. And she wasn't crazy about Texas either. So we went and it worked out. So no, I didn't have, I talked about maybe I wanted to be a DJ at some time. There was no show business in my family background. So it's not something somebody said like, I wonder how you can do that.
Well, when you headed to California, like what was the first things that you did to meet the right people and get established? And
so my sister was not in show business at that time, but at one time she had been a talent coordinator on the Joey Bishop show. She knew some people still and introduced me to somebody who introduced me to, there was a quiz show name called Tattletales. Okay, Bert Convy was the host. They would have couples on, and the guys would be on stage, and the gals were in the soundproof booth, and you'd ask questions to the guys, and they'd see whether they could get the right answers for the gals. Anyway, the people at Tattletales would pay. They gave you a stack of cards, blue cards for guy questions, pink cards for gal questions, and yellow cards for it doesn't matter. But they'd pay you $15 if they used a question. So that was my first pay. I didn't sell a lot of them, but it actually pissed me off because it was the first time I was rewritten. I wrote this. I still remember the question. Okay, that's how much it bothered me. Guys, you're cooking a romantic dinner for two, and you've got the steaks on the grill, and you drop one of the steaks on the ground. Who's getting the steak? It's a great question. Okay, and they rewrote it. They said, "And would you tell her?" Well, why would you tell her? Because you're. I mean, why are you going to tell? I'll take the steak, honey. Yeah. So anyway, I knew I didn't want to do that. And I also had to learn that you don't make any money writing for stand-up comics. So I started writing spec scripts because I knew I liked situation comedy.
Did you start out trying to write for any notable stand-up comics?
No.
No. Okay.
Because
that's why. Maybe that's why. Yeah.
Word around town was they don't pay you.
Yeah, I think Rodney only paid $50 anyway. Like,
and that's probably when he was hot, early on. So anyway, so I started writing spec scripts, wound up in this improv show and got discovered there along with Chris Thompson, who was a great writer producer, created Bosom Buddies, and Judy Askins, who was Judy Pioli then, and she went on to direct Perfect Strangers. Anyway, this guy Harvey Miller, who went on to write Private Benjamin, but he had done a lot of TV, and he had a new show going on NBC, and he came to this improv show and asked the three of us if we wanted to be on his writing staff. So I asked him if he wanted to read any of my spec scripts, and he said, "What if I don't like them?" So
you had the job, and you threw a blocker on.
Yeah, I could have really blown it, but yeah. Yeah, by showing him my Barney Miller, which I was so proud of. Yeah.
How in the olden days now, like when you're,
and it was you know what? I'm old. Okay, I've come to the realization I'm old, and it was the olden days.
I jokingly say that, but like you're in your prime, sir. What I meant was like, what's the process of a spec script when getting a real feel for Barney Miller when it's only on? There's no VCRs yet. There's no TV on DVD yet.
Okay, so I'm a sitcom savant. I don't know. I watched enough of it growing up that it was like, okay. They stopped for a commercial here. That's an act break. I didn't know the term. It's a hey May. Hey May, look, they're trapped in the haunted house. Okay, we'll be back in a minute. Yeah, just from watching it. Actually, my Barney Miller, I'm glad he didn't read it because I had them going. I kind of did a dog day afternoon thing. I had an outside set, and they never did outside sets on Barney Miller.
You would have blown the budget and got the whole thing canceled.
Yeah, what happens when you're writing spec scripts, though, is hopefully, like the first thing I wrote was a Rhoda, and the people who sent me here and then sent me there, to Tattletales, got it to somebody who worked on Rhoda, and you get, you can't write this yet, but you can write. You should keep writing. The jokes are good. You just don't have it yet.
Got it. So they could see the promise. Okay.
Yeah.
And what was the show now that you're being recruited from the?
It's called Sorota's Court. It was Night Court. Okay. Exact. It was Night Court. Michael Constantine was the judge. Fred Willard was the John Larroquette guy. So we did, I think, 12 of them, or maybe 18. I think we did 12 of them. It was a time when NBC was like in third place. There was no Fox. That's how old I am. There was no Fox. Okay. I think we were on once 2 weeks in a row in the same time slot. They didn't have a lot of faith in the show. But when it got canceled, it was just when Cindy Williams had the entire writing staff of Laverne and Shirley fired because they weren't writing her character. Okay. And Harvey, who discovered me, had been a writer-producer on Odd Couple and was good friends with Gary Marshall. And he said, "Gary, you want to hire these three people." So he hired Mark, Judy, and Chris. So we went from this show that was canceled to on a week-to-week basis, either Happy Days was number one or we were number one. And working on Laverne and Shirley was an experience.
All right, well, let's talk about I know I'm giving you PTSD, but
It's just a little. Like I said, we could tell people that we talked briefly earlier, and I think you're blocking a picture of Cindy Williams, and I thanked you for that.
I think I've had it here. I got the font, so I have
Okay.
him
Yeah, no, I can see the
Garry
ponds, and Henry was always great. Their stage was next door to our stage, and like they were the good kids, and we were the bad kids because Penny and Cindy didn't really like each other and get along. It was
Why didn't Penny and Cindy like each other?
Their process was, I think, a little bit different. Cindy, so after she had fired everybody and I got there, her management was like counting words in the script. Okay, not even jokes. They were counting words in the script. And I think Cindy felt a little overwhelmed because Garry had created the show, and their father, Tony, was the guy who brought the mafia around to show them around. And he was the business guy, actually. Tony was an executive, and Sister Ronnie was casting the show and a producer on the show. So I think Cindy felt a little outnumbered. And at that time, there have been a lot of comedy teams that didn't necessarily love each. I don't know that Lou Costello loved getting slapped all the time by Bud, So they just didn't, yeah.
It's one of those things that I mean, you were there, so like you saw everything firsthand. As an outsider, like like it's sort of a giant. Like I get that people don't have to be best friends, but it's like when you find out, like when you find out Kim Cattrall and Sarah Jessica Parker hate each other, and you realize, wow, they're really good actors because they come across as like
and the chemistry between them was amazing, and they did over the years they had a fine working relationship. That was not the case early on.
Laverne and Penny and Cindy.
Yeah, Penny and Cindy. And it was a tough place to work. I mean, showrunners were always fired from that show. I got to be the showrunner on that show with Chris Thompson because at some point the studio said, we're not paying off it's not pay or play. We're not paying any more producers after you get fired. Because at some point a producer would go, God damn it, they're going to say what's on the script. Okay. And they get fired because my only real regret of Laverne and Shirley is Penny, Cindy, Michael, and David, and the people who were showrunners. We never sat down and said, okay, look, this is our process. It's not the most comfortable thing in the world. We're going to write stuff. We're going to take you into funny situations. They were all for funny people. It would be stupid not to use what they did. But sometimes you'd go to a run through and see stuff that had nothing to do with the script, and you'd be up all night because now we got to figure out why they're dressed like characters from Alice in Wonderland. Okay, but it's funny. Our job is, hey, would it be funny if Penny and Cindy were in a Murphy bed? Yeah, that's funny. So how do we do that? And, and over time, they did get more confidence in what Chris and Judy and I and Paula Roth, who was brilliant, what we were all doing. It was different.
It's always interesting when you hear because it's like Laverne and Shirley is like one of those classic shows. I mean, as a spinoff, it was thought of
a hit immediately.
Yeah,
a hit immediately. You asked me if I knew Fred Fox Jr. Our offices were down the hall from Happy Days offices. It was always, and during the time I was on Blansky's Beauties, God bless Gary Marshall, he really believed in that show. It was so terrible. But Fred was on staff there. So when I went to work on Laverne and Shirley, it was only for the last 4 shows of that season that after Cindy had everybody fired. And Gary didn't want Mark, Chris, and Judy to go away, so he put us on Blansky's Beauties just until the next season of Laverne and Shirley would start. So yeah, I actually worked with Freddie a little bit.
I always think it's funny, like the Blonsky's Beauties thing, because it's like on paper it looks like it maybe could have worked. Nancy Walker's awesome, right? But it's like it's like you forget. Like I can't even. I'm trying to think. Like there's no like shows these days where they have 10 spinoffs. I mean, like I guess CSIs, but like but like those are almost like the same, but like where a character shows up and they make a whole new show out of it.
So for the majority of people who never saw Blansky's Beauties,
I've never seen
right. So Nancy Walker was kind of like a house mother of these Vegas showgirls. Okay, and I don't know, there were 7 of them, 8. I don't know how many there were. but none of those women were particularly funny or talented. Okay. So it was Nancy Walker. So Garry kept throwing shit against the wall to see what would stick. So Pat Morita, who was Arnold on Happy Days, was playing a cousin of Arnold. And Eddie Mecca, who was on Laverne and Shirley, was playing a cousin of Carmine. And Scott Baio was on playing a cousin of Chachi. And there was a Great Dane called Blackjack. Okay. And, Gary Marshall he taught more showrunners probably than anybody. So you get to go to editing, and it was like one of the old fashioned studio film rooms. It was filmed. So you'd sit there in these big chairs and they'd show film, and Garry would be in there. And it was always, cut to the dog and take out that last 40 seconds. That was like when the girls were talking. Okay. And Garry was a character in it who didn't speak. He was like the head of the casino, but he had a guy who was next to him. He tried everything. It was just, yeah. They're not all hits, Jeff.
They aren't. It's like it's like when you see someone like a Susan Harris or like, Gary Marshall, and so many hits. And you realize like, oh, well, those did rise above, but there are some that
Garry was also my mother, the car. Okay. The talking car.
But then he also had Mork and Mindy. It's like there was like stratospheres, and then
nobody hits all home runs.
Nobody
hits all home runs.
But it's amazing that some of the people you've worked with, how many home runs they did hit.
Yes. And what a blessing for me they gave me the keys to very expensive cars and just said, don't screw it up.
Now, Fred Fox Jr., as we mentioned, had a very different. Cindy Williams actually gave him his start. She hired him as like his car washer or something.
Yeah.
And then he went to do writing because his father was very famous, and Garry gave him a chance, and he went to the Happy Days and all that. So on the last seasons, it's always awkward watching a show when it just completely falls apart.
When it's dying.
Well, when they just make so many changes, it's not the same show anymore. You know what I mean? It's like, all right, so Cindy Williams, they moved from Milwaukee.
And I wasn't there for that.
Okay.
I had left to do a pilot called Working Stiffs with Michael Keaton and Jim Belushi. I left on good terms, and it was before California happened.
Okay, because Cindy leaves the show and right at some point, or mostly doesn't she?
She leaves the show, all right. You want to know?
Yeah, of course, yeah. I
feel you
want to tell me.
I want the world to know what happened. I had left the show and had done other things, and they were moving right along. Penny was supposed to direct her first movie. Actually, her first directing job was on Working Stiffs. I gave Penny her first directing job. Penny was supposed to direct The Joy of Sex. That was going to be her first movie. Very funny script written by John Hughes. Can't go wrong. But the story, it needed some story. Okay. Penny hired me to do a rewrite of the script. And she says, so we can spend more time together, why don't you come back to Laverne and Shirley and showrun the last season? Because they were pretty sure it was going to be the last season. And they knew that Cindy was pregnant. The thing was, okay, we're going to do 22 episodes, but because Penny's directing the movie and Cindy's pregnant, you only have Penny and Cindy for 18 of the 22 weeks, but they have to be in all 22 shows. Okay. So that means we're going to shoot some extra scenes in those 18 weeks where they go, Lenny and Squiggy, we're going to Chicago, and Lenny and Squiggy, we're back from Chicago. Okay. And we're going to do episodes with Lenny and Squiggy and Rhonda and Carmine. What could go wrong? Okay. Cindy's pregnant. There's a hospital bed on the set. Okay. The deal is she's got to be out hard stop 11 o'clock at night. Okay. On the shooting nights. No problem. And I think it was the 6th week when it happened. It's like 10:15 at night, and we're doing pickups. The audience gone, and some major light goes out. And I asked the lighting guy, how long is this going to take to get done? And he goes, 20 minutes. Okay, we only got to pick up like 2 lines. Not a problem. I tell Cindy, here's what the situation is. The light's out. The guy says 20 minutes. We're going to be up. We're going to have no problem. We wrap at like 11:05. Okay. And she's married to Bill Hudson now, who's like Svengali for her for some reason. So I go to work and we shoot Laverne and Shirley on Tuesday nights, okay? And Wednesday is our Monday. So I go into work Wednesday, and my secretary says, Gary Nardino would like to see you in his office. Now, Gary Nardino is the vice president of television for Paramount Studios, has never called me into his office, but must be very happy with the wonderful job I'm doing. Okay. I cross the lot. I walk into Gary Nardino's office. Gary Nardino, Gary Marshall, Tony Thermopoulos, the president of ABC. Oh my God, I've lost the name now. He went on to be the head of Warner Brothers, but he was our ABC guy at the time, early in his career. And the first thing I hear is, what the fuck did you do? Cindy Williams has quit the show. Okay. Now we only got Penny for 18 weeks. Okay. So we can't shut down. So I say, we can keep yelling at me, or I can go try to get a script for tomorrow that doesn't have Cindy in it. So I go back along with Al Adelman and Roger Garrett. We write one of the worst Laverne and Shirley episodes ever. If you're a Laverne and Shirley fan, there's one where Laverne wears big hats. Okay. She's got like the Eiffel Tower, and she's got like a gondola hat. She's in some kind of fashion show. It's horrible, but we get through the week. Okay. But now it's Laverne and some boyfriends, some what is she doing? What is she not doing? It was a hard season. Okay. And we get Penny out, but it wasn't in 18 weeks because she was actually dating this guy, the actor Larry Breeding, who is in one of Gary's shows called Who's Watching the Kids? Okay. Which was his last attempt at Blansky's Beauties. Okay. So she's seeing him in real life, and he's playing the boyfriend. Okay. So Friday night is our big rewrite. Okay. We do the run through. Actors go home for the weekend. We do the big rewrite. Come to work Monday morning. Nobody can find Larry Breeding. Larry Breeding's agent can't find Larry Breeding. Larry Breeding got drunk, crashed his car on Fountain Boulevard into an overpass. Larry Breeding is dead. And Penny's been seeing this man in real life. Talk about a trooper. Okay, so we don't shoot that week. We recast Jim Belushi in the same part, same script, same words, and Penny does the show. But it took us an extra week. So we did 22 shows in 23 weeks instead of 22 shows in 22 weeks. Cindy Williams, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah.
Wow, that's that's like a lot.
That's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah.
That's a lot.
I mean, to have the person die, I mean, I was like, oh
yeah.
my God.
And still have to go up and do the show. Yeah. Penny was great. Penny was great. Also, not that, in working, they had ideas. They were demanding. When I became showrunner with Chris Thompson, I had seen all these showrunners fired. I think they put an ad in the Valley Green sheet looking for producers. And they finally said, hey, Mark and Chris, you got the job. Anyway, first thing I did was I went to the dressing room with Penny and Cindy in there. And I said, what do you guys want to do? And it was Cindy who said, I think we should be hypnotized and act like chickens. And you know what? It was a fine episode. I just got to figure out, why there's a hypnotist, why the bell rings, and why he says you're chickens at that moment. And they were chickens in the window of a department store, and they fought like chickens, and they were great at it. But it was an easy week because Cindy's not going to cause any problems when she said, I think we should be hypnotized and act like chickens.
Right. She's calling it. All right. I think I'll let you. We're gonna take a break. Mark's gonna take a Xanax, and then he's gonna be right back. No, just kidding. Okay. Thanks.
Heroin. I don't like Xanax.
Thanks for reliving the trauma with me. But you mentioned working stiffs. This is very short lived. But I mean, it's amazing when you look back as like Michael Keaton and Jim Belushi. This is before they were anything, right? This is Michael Keaton's probably coming off being a stand-up still, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Did you work with them enough to go, oh, these guys are good? I mean, they're still going, both of them.
They are both going. I was fired from that show.
Cindy Williams got into it. And then
no, Michael and Jim were not crazy about each other. I can tell you that. They just weren't. And that show came about. So a guy named Dave Duclon, who was a writer-producer on Laverne and Shirley, had a very good career. I think he may have created Punky Brewster. Anyway, he had written a pilot. They weren't happy with the pilot. I was brought in to rewrite the pilot. I did a rewrite. Keaton was already attached. Went to Chicago, met with Jim, cast Jim. The instructions were they wanted a male Laverne and Shirley. I was going through things in my life at the time. I wasn't necessarily completely present and never figured out what the show really was. I mean, they were brothers, but Laverne was the dreamer, or was the realist. Shirley was the dreamer. It was pretty well defined what the characters were. The show wasn't great. My Mother the Car had a good cast, probably.
Right. Good cat. I mean, it's funny when you look back. I mean, they weren't who they are now. So but it's like today, if like to do a sitcom starring Michael Keaton and Jim Belushi would be
And I never sat down with them or with separately and go, hey, Michael, what do you think's funny about this? He was a pretty funny guy. Yeah.
And you worked with Batman. You can say you worked with Batman.
Yeah.
You did It's a Living before Golden Girls?
Yes.
Right? All right. You were there. Did they like each other? I'm just trying to see if like any cat, maybe it's you. Like if
I'll tell you the one that I didn't like. I'll tell you the four of them, the one that was the most trouble. It's a Living is my favorite work situation of them all. It was in first run syndication. Do we need to explain what that is? I guess it's not a network. The Cosby Show had just made this huge syndication deal while it was still on. And syndication means instead of it being on a network all over the country, you go market to market and sell it to Channel 5 in Denver and Channel 11 in New York, whatever, and you sell it to enough stations that it makes it worthwhile to do it. It's a Living had been on ABC for a season, and it was the first season that cable had made inroads into network television. So it was canceled with a 28 share. Now, I know that's not, but today, if you have like a 3 share or 5 share, you're a hit show. Okay, so it was canceled with a 28 share, but they figured out how to do a syndication deal. So it was not shot in front, we didn't shoot in front of an audience. There were no network notes. There were no studio notes. It was kind of like, hey, my dad's got a barn, let's do a show. I wrote more of them. I wish I had written 27 Golden Girls instead of 5 of them because there's no residuals from It's a Living. I heard the characters. I loved them. I loved the cast. It was just, again, it wasn't shot in front of an audience, so there wasn't nearly as much pressure. I got to go home at night and see my wife and kids, and yeah, it was a whole different thing.
Well, you had just come off Charles in Charge as well, too, or did some stuff.
Now, here's the thing about Charles in Charge.
Yeah, they hated it. Really hated it.
Charles in Charge was the worst. It was possibly the worst experience.
Was it?
Of all the worst experiences? Probably Charles in Charge.
But similar in that it had a network run and then went to syndication, right?
Yeah, I wasn't there for syndication. I was there for a network run.
Okay.
It was a tough work experience, but yeah, nice people.
So what made it harder to work at Charles in Charge than it did to work with Cindy Williams?
Michael Jacobs, who created Charles in Charge, had a very different work schedule. He was the creator of the show. It's his call, but he would like to go to work at 2:00 in the morning after you had been sitting there all day waiting and then you'd write something, but then Michael would have to rewrite. It was just,
creative nightmare. Okay.
Yeah, it wasn't fun. And it's a job. It's as hard as a job is. If you're not having any fun, it's really you might as well be in a coal mine because it's killing you the same way.
You mentioned you don't get residuals on It's a Living. Is it because it's just nowhere?
Yeah, or it's on. I think it's on Scott Bio's watch. I'll get.
Well, that's Charles
in
Charge. I'm talking. It's a Living.
I'll get like a 39-cent Charles in Charge residual. I think Scott's watching it on his phone or something because I don't know where it is. Well, there's still fans every once in a while, on Facebook or something. It's like, oh, it was my favorite show. And, good. I loved it. It was funny.
Right. I mean, people still talk about Charles in Charge, but It's a Living is not one that people go, oh, I don't, it's not like they hear It's a Living. But that one, you don't make anything. So isn't it weird that like some shows just kind of disappear in a world that we live in where you could
I don't think it's weird. I think in the world we live in, it's not weird at all. I don't think 40 years from now, people are going to be talking about Hacks. I just don't. Okay. Or Ted Lasso. There's not enough episodes. They're making, yeah. you know, I hate to sound like the old fart, but we did 22 shows in 9 months. These people are doing 8 episodes or 10 episodes and making us wait another year and a half before we're going to see another 10 episodes. They're not that precious. They're good, but I don't think they're going to have the staying power because we're just being inundated by so much new content. And there's a generation that ain't watching that content at all. They're watching YouTube.
Right. But sometimes they can rediscover something like an
Like,
It's Living,
like
like on
Golden Girls.
Netflix or something.
The pandemic was huge for Golden Girl. We got a whole new generation of fans during the pandemic because that's just when it went on Hulu. If I said I only wrote like 5 Golden Girls and my residuals like doubled after the pandemic. So yeah,
That's really cool. So it drives me crazy too, by the way. Like Stranger Things, I just gave up. I'm like, I can't even, I don't even remember what happened. And I am not rewatching the entire series because
right.
you
And
waited 3 years.
my wife and I, every time, it's like if night manager or night agent or night whatever, it's a CIA agent, and I'm guessing he's going rogue, but let's see it anyway. Okay. But we always have to watch the last episode of the previous season just to have an idea.
Right. Well, I tell you, The Sopranos did that way back when. Like there was like one season where you forgot it was even on anymore, and it comes back. But this is why I appreciate so much currently Only Murders in the Building, short seasons, but very consistent. They don't make us wait. And The Pit. I love that The Pit is kind of like, and there's more episodes.
Yes, because it's a 12-hour shift or whatever it is.
Yeah, I think even,
and it's a complicated show. I mean, I get if The Pit took longer, I was surprised that they didn't take longer because it's not an easy shoot, I'm sure.
Oh, it looks like they probably have a whole staff of continuity experts.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh, geez. Yes. yeah.
Okay. As we enter Golden Girls,
yes,
your Golden Girls era, I have to first ask
yes,
a very important question and try, because based on some of the comments you made, you may have a bias, but of Golden Girls, Charles in Charge, and Laverne and Shirley.
Take Charles and
hang on. You didn't hear the question yet.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Which is your favorite theme song?
Oh,
they all have very catchy theme songs.
Laverne and Shirley.
Laverne and Shirley. Okay.
Yeah. People are still going Schlemiel, Schlemazel, whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we'll leave those in the past. All right. So Golden Girls. So you're coming into an institution when you come into the Golden Girls, right? I mean, this is already like an established.
Yeah, pretty established. Yeah. Knew it was serious when the day it was announced that I was going to be the showrunner. There was a knock on our door at home, and it was a CBS reporter wanting, and we weren't on CBS. Okay. It was like, oh, look at that. I think I've broken out in a rash. It was like, yeah, this could be, it's a hit show. Don't mess up, dude. So
it's a lot of pressure, right? I mean, and you're dealing with 4, legend is underselling it.
And I had to go to lunch with the ladies before I got hired.
Are they delightful in person? Which of them was most like their actual characters?
Probably B. Yeah. It wasn't a stretch for B playing that character. She was great though. She was great. They were, they all 4 were home run hitters. You go to a run through or something, and I tell them, don't bother learning this joke. We're going to rewrite it. And they'd go, no, give us another day. And they'd find something. It was great. It was a lot of pressure. Had a great writing staff, and we did great work.
Yeah. I mean,
we did great work.
A show like that doesn't like pop during like the pandemic like that just because it's there. I mean, it's
so I don't spend every night at home going, honey, we're watching Golden Girls again. Okay. But when my wife, if we go on a road trip, sometimes you go into a hotel, and like there'll be one channel that'll be Friends all night, or Everyone Loves Raymond all night. And we've seen all of those. We travel enough that we've seen all those. And I'll just see what's happening on the Golden Girls channel. And I've never seen the shows hardly before my administration because I was doing It's a Living, and Saturday night was date night. I'd never watched The Golden Girls before I got the job much. And so if it's one of our episodes, I'll watch, and my wife will be laughing, or I'll be going, that was a good joke. We really did good work. So I'm really proud of The Golden Girls.
Well, it's definitely something to be proud of. My question is, so having not watched it, like,
Yes.
how did you make sure you were continuing the same momentum, get a feel for the characters?
The sitcom. Rose is the dumb one, Blanche is the sexy one. So to some degree, there's that, okay? And so like when I first got there, when writers first started giving me scripts, Sophia used to do these picture at Sicily, ninth, whatever. And the first time I got those, it was like I mark it to be cut out because it doesn't make I never liked them, okay? But Nina Feinberg, who's now Nina Wass, who was our line producer, said, no, 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 people love those stories. Okay, I'm not stupid. Let's put that back in. Okay, so we're going to still do those. I watched a few, and it was like, sometimes you'd hire a writer who had great credits and they don't hear the characters. And I was lucky I heard the characters. It was okay.
How at the end of was it the 7th season, the last one, like before you
When B
transitioned?
left,
Yeah, like how did, then
how
you
did that
become the
happen?
Golden Palace, right?
Okay.
Are we back to like hating stuff?
I had nothing to do with it. Okay. So actually, here was the situation. I had done season 5, I had done season 6, and decided I wanted to leave Los Angeles. I wasn't seeing my kids. I saw what life in LA was. I foresaw I'd be on wife number 3, only be able to afford wife number 2. My kids would be in rehab, I'd be in rehab. 2 weeks ago, my wife and I celebrated our 56th anniversary. Still on wife number 1. Okay. I knew it wasn't going to work well. I went to Boulder, Colorado to have Thanksgiving with friends and bought a house and came back and told Paul Witt and Tony Thomas, I've just bought a house. I'm leaving the show. And they said, and I had just signed a new contract for like 3 years. And first they said, you're the smartest guy in LA. God bless you. I went back to my office and my secretary said, Paul and Tony want you back there right now. So I go back and they said, no, you're not leaving. And we worked it out that I would be there for 6 weeks pre-production, take the family, go to the beach, spend 6 weeks, get as much paper together, as many scripts together as we could. And then I'd come in Monday morning for the Monday reading, stay till the Tuesday night run through, give my notes, get back on a plane, go back to Boulder, still be executive producer of The Golden Girls. There were people who were ready for more responsibility. It worked okay, but it was not the same. B did not love it, okay? And wasn't in love with some of the people who were in charge. They chewed gum. Can't chew gum around B. Arthur. Go figure.
I've actually heard that.
It's true. Okay, fortunately, I'm not a gum chewer, or at least not around B. She was toying with the idea whether she was going to leave or not. I'm not saying it was my fault that she left, but she left. Okay?
Mark, it sounds like your fault.
You know what? It's one of the brightest parts of my career. Yes, of course. She couldn't work without me. That's why when she left, and somehow they sold the show to CBS, which was Golden Palace. And let's all be honest, it was not Susan Harris's greatest writing. We never decided how those 3 women bought a beachfront hotel in Miami. My sickness is 40 years later, I'm still trying to fix the show. What if Blanche won it in a card game? What if also, chances are, if the people in 305 needed new towels, they wouldn't be sending an 80-year-old woman up with the towels. There probably might have been more staff there. There were problems with the show. Okay, let's put it that way. And the audience saw it. It was not as good as Golden Girls. There were some okay episodes. I'm actually proud of an episode that I wrote. Don Cheadle was the hotel manager. And I wrote an episode where Blanche was hanging the rebel flag because the daughters of the Confederacy were coming. It was a meaty episode about what that meant to a black man. But as a show, it just wasn't as good.
Got it. Cheech,
that's
Cheech was on that, right? Cheech Marin.
So in the original, okay, Susan had written the chef. It was this guy with a Russian accent. They hired a British comedian named Alexei Sales, who I think was pretty big in England at the time. He comes over. We do like the first 3 episodes. It's just not working. And on a Monday, Paul Witt comes in. He goes, I was skiing this weekend with Cheech Marin, and Cheech would love to do the show. We're going to make Cheech the chef. Okay. So now we still have to shoot this week's show with Alexi Sales in it. And Alexi has brought his wife over from England because it's their anniversary, and he's on an American sitcom. And we finish shooting that show, and Whit turns to me and goes, "You got to go fire Alexi Sales." And it's like, you can't see it. I'm going to just turn this a little bit. There's a sign on my back wall. I can't get to show, but it says, "Everything about it is appealing." There's an old song, "There's no business like show business." There's a line that says, "Everything about it is appealing." And you have to constantly remind yourself. So when Paul Witt says, and I go down, and there's like flowers in the dressing room because it's his anniversary, and I got to fire the guy. And then we go back and we reshoot all the scenes from the first few episodes with Cheech. So yeah, Cheech Marin was in the show.
So not just fired, erased. Okay.
Yes.
On his anniversary, in front of his wife, who had just flown over.
Yeah, by some guy who he never probably talked to in the 4 weeks he was there.
By some guy who was like trying to catch the flight to Boulder.
Exactly. Thank you. Drive safely, everybody.
You've done a million things, and like I know Jeff Sherman mentioned You Wish when I talked to him. Yeah, but
holy, this shows I hate.
I know. I don't want to talk about that.
It's just getting longer and longer.
I don't want to talk about that one because I actually think I cut that out of his episode. So
okay, but briefly, that was another Michael Jacobs show about a genie living with a family, a single mother with kids who didn't want a genie because it was going to spoil the kids. Hello.
What a waste of a good genie.
Oh my God. And every week you'd go, if only Robin Williams was here. Anyway.
The final one I want to talk to more is just because I thought he was amazing.
Because you want to hurt me go ahead.
Richard Jenny is Richard Jenny, Platypus Man, which I've never seen the show, to be honest. I've seen Richard Jenny though twice.
Yes.
As a stand-up comic and brilliant, tragic end. And I just wanted to bring it up just as if you haven't seen Richard Jenny's comedy, you should definitely. I don't know about the show or not, but
it was a great it was a terrific stand-up. It doesn't always translate. I'll leave it at that.
Right. But there is a special.
No sense, walking on the graves of all the dead people I know.
Well, no, you're right. Sometimes shows just don't gel, but there is an actual Richard Jenny comedy special called Platypus Man.
Platypus Man, yes.
Yeah, and there's others. And I remember seeing him. We saw him at local comedy.
And that show was created by guys who were from Golden Girls. Yeah, good writers and everything. Richard was never terribly happy during the process. Yeah, another show that just didn't work.
But huge talent. So,
and I was a consultant only there 2 days a week. So you know how committed I was to that job.
All right. Well, you've had a lot of amazing shows. I know we just kind of scratched the surface a bit. Do you want to just plug as we wind down, do you want to plug your books as well?
I'd love to plug my books. Not enough people are reading my books. Here's the guarantee. If they don't make you laugh, I'll give you your money back. You just have to find me. Okay. So the first one, With Time Off for Bad Behavior, takes place in a show that's very similar to Laverne and Shirley. I think you'll recognize everybody, and it'll give you an idea of what that season that I described was like. But it's also, there's a relationship thing that goes on. The Comatose Adventures of Lenny Rose is about a guy who has his biggest success while he's in a coma, and it's good. And the other one is called Kind of Dirty Paris Confessions, which has nothing to do with show business, but they're all pretty funny, and they're all available on Amazon. And I don't know what's taking people so long to find them, but there you go.
I will make sure there's a link to each one of those in the show notes when this goes live.
Yes.
I'll tell you the day before so you can watch the little spike on Amazon.
Oh my gosh, yes. Thank you.
Mark, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I appreciate you sharing all these stories, the good
It was
ones
fun, Jeff.
and the
It was
ones that
fun.
hurt you.
Yeah. Jeez. I just realized what a failure I was most of the time.
No,
But
no, no. It's
uh,
you know,
like I say,
when you look at it
if
like
you have
this,
a career, more shows fail than succeed. You keep trying.
all the great stories come from
Yeah, the
so from,
disasters, the
yeah.
disaster. Yeah.
No one wants to hear about your smooth
Don't
success.
if the first day of the show you see one of the second or third players is carrying a gun, leave because it's not going to end well. Yeah. All right,
All right. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate you.
Jeff. Take care.